Welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige, and today is a crossover episode with Jenny from It's Murder Up North and Mackenzie from Death by Champagne. We had to record all of this separately and put it together because unfortunately we lost our Zoom call, but I think that this came out perfectly. We will be comparing the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose to the true story that inspired it, which is the story of Anneliese Michel. Without further ado, here we go. So first, we are going to tell you about the movie Exorcism of Emily Rose. The Exorcism of Emily Rose was released on September 9th, 2005, and it was directed by Scott Derrickson. It's loosely based on the real story of Anneliese Michel. Erin Bruner is a go-getter, a very motivated lawyer who wants to be a senior partner in her law firm. Erin takes on the case of Father Richard Moore. Father Richard is a Catholic priest charged with negligent homicide while he was doing an exorcism of Emily Rose, who was 19 years old. The bishopric wants Father Richard to plead guilty so the publicity around the situation would die down. However, Father Richard decides to go on with what he believes and pleads not guilty. As the trial is going on, the statements of the witnesses are pictured by flashbacks. Prosecutor Ethan Thomas questions a few doctors and neurologists in an attempt to determine a medical reason for Emily's death. He was looking for them to say it was something like epilepsy or schizophrenia. He was sure that there had to be a medical explanation behind what happened and that Emily wasn't possessed. This is what Emily Rose sounded like during the possession in the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Later on, we're going to hear the real audio of Anneliese Michel to compare.
Tell me your name, wicked one.
He who commands you is he who orders you thrown down from the highest heaven into the depths of hell. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I now command you. Tell me your name. Hear, therefore, and fear, Satan, enemy of the faith. Give me your name, demon.
Names! Names! Moderator Army of Shashika!
Ancient serpents, depart from this servant of God. Tell me your 6 names.
We are the ones who dwell within. New social hen, Batokai, Queen, Hobby Tobbit, and Ronnie. Case of paraffin and you die. Miglio, Anablio. And I am Lucifer, the devil in the flesh.
Doctor, help him!
In the movie, Emily was in college and ended up dropping out after she kept having these hallucinations and crazy muscle spasms at 3 in the morning. She goes back to her parents' household, and while there, she was treated with epilepsy and psychosis medicines. Father Richard Moore was contacted when whatever was happening to Emily was getting worse. Father Moore's evaluation and studies of Emily made him believe completely that Emily was indeed possessed by a demon. Her parents give Father Moore the green light to perform an exorcism on their daughter. It didn't work. Father Moore speculated that the meds Emily was taking for epilepsy and schizophrenia were the reason that the exorcism flopped. He said that the meds paralysed Emily's brain activity and kept the demon in a place where he couldn't reach it.
So Father Moore gets called to the witness stand and he wants to tell Emily's story. Erin Bruner starts having these paranormal events happening at her house, waking her up at 3 a.m. on the dot with the smells of something being burned. Father Moore informs her that the demons may be focusing on her, telling Erin he experienced similar events on the night he was organizing the exorcism for Emily. Erin backs Father Moore by calling on anthropologist Sadira Adani to testify about the beliefs around spiritual possession from a variety of cultures, but Ethan Thomas rejects her statements as hot air and nonsensical babble. A medical doctor steps in by the name of Graham Cartwright. He was there the night the exorcism took place. He hands over the cassette tape that had the recording of the exorcism on it, and Father Richard Moore uses this as evidence in the case. Graham Cartwright had planned on testifying about the exorcism and proving it was real and basically argue that Ethan Thomas's theory of there being a medical explanation behind what happened. However, he wasn't able to testify at all because he was hit by a car. Erin Bruner is super upset and goes to her office. Her boss told her that he would fire her if she let Father Richard Moore on the stand again. So Erin goes to see Father Moore, where he's being held in jail, and he talks her into letting him get out the rest of Emily's story, even though Erin's boss had literally just threatened to terminate her if she lets him do that.
The following day, Father Moore takes the stand again, and he reads a letter that Emily wrote before she died. The next morning, following the exorcism, Emily had a visit by the Virgin Mary in a field close to her house. She was given the choice to go to heaven. Emily opted to take the suffering she was going through over going to heaven, and later she would have these wounds on her hands just like Jesus did when he was crucified. She wrote about it, and Thomas does not believe any of it at all. He thinks the wounds are from Emily self-harming. The jury deliberates and finds Father Moore guilty, but the court asked Judge Brewster to give a sentence of time served. The judge is in shock about the court asking him that, but he does agree to it and lets Father Moore go free. Erin is presented with a partnership in her firm, but she turns it down. Later, Father Moore and Erin go to Emily's grave together, and Father Moore essentially says that a time will come when Emily will be described as a saint. Anneliese was born out of wedlock and raised in Germany on the 21st of September 1952. Some sources say she was born in 1948. She was born to Joseph and Anna Michel. Back then, being a devout Catholic, she was shamed for having Anneliese out of wedlock, and when she and Joseph got married, she was forced to wear a black dress. Joseph was in World War II. He was a Nazi soldier who was fighting against the Russians. When the war was over, he surrendered to U.S. and British forces. He and many other soldiers were emotionally damaged and out of touch with reality.
Anneliese was very religious and stern growing up. She lived in a village where one half were in World War II and the others were in concentration camps. She was always afraid of terrible things happening to her parents because of their genetics or inherited impurity. She also believed that they would be shunned from their community because the kids were fragile and not in great physical shape. Joseph was wanting to become a priest at one point, and 3 of her aunts were nuns. Anneliese, being a genuinely sensitive person, felt like she should be compassionate for the sins of other people. She would sleep on the floor as a repentance for drug addicts, who slept on the ground outside. This family setting would launch her forward into a real-life nightmare by the time she was diagnosed with a few illnesses in the future.
Any interactions with boys was forbidden. She and her sisters couldn't stay overnight with their friends if they happened to have any brothers, and as she and her sisters grew up, they were not allowed to go to any school dances either.
When Anna was a young girl, a doctor named Dr. Leonard diagnosed her with neurosis, which he said was the reason for her having a dysfunctional family. Reasons such as her father not understanding his daughter, and when it came to her mother, Anneliese loathed her. The forms of discipline used were items that were holy and prayers. Anneliese was 13 in 1965, and she was a remarkable student, and the main subjects she was excellent at were Latin and Roman history.
So those are just a few facts about her childhood and upbringing, so we can all get a better understanding of who she was and how she was raised. It's 1968 during the autumn season, and Anneliese is now 16. She fainted in the middle of one of her classes and then went into a daze. Around 12 a.m. that night, she experienced sleep paralysis. After she had urinated, she came out of it. That's the first thing that happened to Anna to kick off the beginning of everything to come.
In the summertime of 1969, the same things were happening again. Her parents called on their family doctor, Dr. Voigt. After he looked her over, he suggested that she go to a neurologist, Dr. Luthi. He didn't find anything during her first visit, but he did schedule her for an EEG on the 27th of August 1969. When she went for her EEG, it was completely normal. The doctor still believed that she was having a grand mal seizures. But since these things had only happened twice, she wasn't put on any medication. Anneliese developed swollen tonsils and had a tonsillectomy. After her surgery, she then had pleurisy and pneumonia. To add on top of all that, she got tuberculosis. Because of all of this, she decided to drop out of her 1969-1970 year of school. Anneliese could not stand being in bed all of the time. She was always upset about it, but her parents completely brushed her off and acted like she never said a word. Her mum would often have these loud rosaries to drown out the sounds of Anneliese's complaining.
In February of 1970, Anneliese was taken to a hospital that focused solely on children with lung disease. Nothing helped her get better, so she was transferred to a tuberculosis hospital. Anneliese stayed to herself because she was super shy, but the other kids there took it the wrong way and thought she was bratty and stuck up. They would bully her and even call her snot nose.
On the 3rd of June, 1970, Anneliese would experience her third seizure. Just like the other times, at midnight she had sleep paralysis again and urinated herself. She was still in the hospital when this happened, and when she came out of it, she started screaming, which woke up the rest of the hospital. The nurses ran in to see what was going on. The children just treated her even worse after that. They would call her crazy, and even in her file it was written that the kids were saying that the devil must have possessed her. A lot of those allegations were because when they first saw Anneliese, she had an evil expression on her face. Her hands were stiff in a position which looked like cat claws reaching out.
Only a few days later, something else happened. As she was saying the rosary, she smelled the scent of violets. She had a blissful feeling overcome her as she went into another glaring daze. When children asked her if she was okay, she came out of it. Again, her hands were stiff and in the cat claw-like position. This blissful feeling of being over the moon went on until the next day. She said she felt that way because of the Virgin Mary.
She was again seen by a neurologist, but a different one this time. His name was Dr. Von Haller. She had another EEG, and the results showed abnormal alpha waves that were blended and sprinkled with delta and theta waves. She was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. This causes seizures, loss of memory, and suffering from visual and auditory hallucinations. This time, the neurologist did put her on an anti-seizure medication. However, when she was on these medications, she had more symptoms of epilepsy.
One night, she was saying the rosary, and for a split second, she saw this evil face, and later wrote down that what she saw made her terrified to even say the rosary again. These pictures she was seeing in her mind would torture her for the rest of her days. Doctors who had access to her medical files said that she was just experiencing symptoms of epilepsy and developing psychosis. Still in the hospital, her heart started to get better, and they finally sent Anneliese home. Her sister said she was angry so often and would even go into these rages, and she seemed to not be able to control them. Not only that, but Anneliese started saying that she hated the church.
She quit taking the anti-seizure medications, and the seizures came back. Anneliese would faint a lot, get this weird and devilish look on her face. Her arms would go stiff, and she urinated herself. When she went back to school early in 1970 to 71, she had a seizure in class. Anneliese went to see a doctor. Her heart issues had come back. She was having circulatory issues. Another doctor by the name of Packhauser was called on. He wrote a letter to Dr. Vaught and said that he was worried about the way these seizures were happening more and more.
Anneliese was super aggravated that she went to all of these doctors and not one could cure her. So she dove into Christian literature and she journeyed to local monuments and sanctuaries. She was really interested in a saint named Barbara Weigand. Anneliese started thinking that maybe she was being punished from up above for some reason. Maybe something she had done wrong, she didn't know. She started looking more into this saint, Barbara, and she saw many similarities between herself and the saint. I'll try not to go too deep into Barbara Weigand's history, but the similarities were that she was born in Germany as well to a really strict religious family, and she also said that she saw the Virgin Mary as well as the Archangel Michael.
Anneliese and her parents started to think what Anneliese was actually seeing wasn't just evil and weird faces. They all agreed that it had to be demons that were sent to terrorize her because she wanted to be a saint. Medically, the doctor said she was clearly having seizures and extreme episodes of schizophrenia psychosis.
In 1973, Anneliese starts college, and she wants to be a teacher, but she was having trouble getting to her classes, getting her homework done, and she really didn't want to get out of bed. She went to her therapist and even said she wanted to commit suicide, but she didn't have the guts to do it, so obviously she was suffering with major depression. Earlier that year, she was saying that she heard these sounds like someone was knocking. Nobody else could hear them. So they took her again to Dr. Voigt, and he told her to go see an audiologist. The audiologist didn't find anything wrong with her.
This is really odd, but after people in her family were saying it's probably demons that are causing her to hear these sounds, her mother, remarkably, started to hear these sounds.
Even though her brain showed normal brain activity when she went back to the neurologist, he kept her on the anti-seizure meds. And this is where things start to get even more bananas. She goes into Dr. Luthie's office in September of 1973, and she's saying that Satan is inside of her, he's telling her to rot in hell and calling her names, and she claims he said a judgment of fire would be experienced by everybody. Dr. Luthie basically decided Anneliese wasn't able to make any decisions on her own, and by this point, her various medical conditions were 100% clear to all of her doctors, that she did have epilepsy for certain, and either schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. But the family seemed not to believe that at all, and Anneliese wasn't believing either. The way she was acting started to get really unusual. She would rip off her clothes, eat coal, and lick up her own urine.
A friend and neighbour of Anneliese's family was the first to speak up about thinking Anneliese was possessed. They all went to the same parish, and that's how Father Arnold Renz started to gather the details about Anneliese and what she was going through. He talked to Father Ernst Alt about it and asked him to go and check her out, do an observation, and he agreed to it. Father Ernst Alt might have been a Roman Catholic priest, but also said he was psychic and telepathic. He claimed that God had given him the ability to recognise if a person was possessed, or if the person only had medical problems.
Later on in the trial, a psychiatrist said that Father Alt had an abnormal personality in the widest sense of the term. The psychiatrist went on to say that the parts of the priest's history even indicate that he had a psychosis of the schizophrenic sort. Father Alt would argue that he saw and heard Christ talking to him. So this similarity between himself and Anneliese would probably have some influence on her understanding of what happened. On the 26th of December of 1973, The movie The Exorcist came out, and this would impact Anneliese's life from here on out.
The priest already had these huge beliefs that he could talk to demons and reach inside someone and pull them out. So when this movie came out, it had a huge impact on Father Alt as well. Anneliese's parents wrote the Bishop of Würzburg, saying that they had been stricken with swarms of flies and they were seeing shadow figures all around the house. Anneliese began to have a complete mental breakdown over the months that followed. She began to have many different personalities which she would come in and out of frequently. She couldn't understand what was real and what wasn't anymore.
She also went to another priest, Father Hermain, 10 times between 1973 and 1975. She was talking to him, and he would basically counsel her, and he did check her out to see if she was possessed by demonic beings. He was like a therapist to her, and they would talk about everything and pray the rosary. Anneliese made the remark that she felt like she had no control over herself, and something else was in control of her. But Father Hermain didn't discover any reason that she would be possessed. He definitely didn't think she was at all. She wasn't violent when he brought out Christian symbols. She wasn't cursing at it or anything like that. During 1975, Father Alt and Father Arnold Renz would go see Anneliese based on Father Alt's claims that he could sense demons. Both of the priests determined that she was possessed. And this is possibly due to watching the movie The Exorcist. It definitely could have played a part and had some influence on them, swaying their beliefs a bit more. They even decided that they should record every session they had with her.
Aber die wenigsten beten. Ja, und in der Kirche werden Herrenfeier das ja für unmodern halten.
Ja?
Ja.
Alle?
Warum?
Ja, warum?
Weil...
Ik mee die Zeus.
Als Maul. Und dann muss er den Leuten bekannt geben.
Wie?
Wie? Da muss er schmeißen.
Gut. Viel zu sagen? Daran?
So, dass er an die meisten Leute rankommt, kapiert?
Noch mehr.
Halt Maul!
Noch mehr.
Die sollen ja mal
Noch mehr sagen. Noch mehr sagen.
Die Schwestern müssen in ihren Unkeinen gehen.
Noch mehr. Noch mehr.
Nein!
Noch mehr. Noch mehr.
Dem Papst muss Gehorsam geleistet werden. Ja.
Noch mehr sagen. Noch mehr.
Und in der Kirche sind jetzt dürfen sie auch nicht mehr eintreten, wenn sie es gemacht haben.
Warum nicht?
Darum.
Noch mehr.
Es muss gebeten werden.
Warum?
Warum?
Wo?
In den Kirchen und in den Familien und vor allen Dingen die Scheißdingen.
Rosenkranz?
Ja! Sonst sage ich aber nichts mehr. Und da dürft ihr Gift rausnehmen.
Noch mehr.
Nein! Ich bin Nero! Ich bin der Dritte im Bunde!
Noch mehr. Noch mehr.
Sie müssen mit dem Scheißkasten. Und zwar mit Zu dem Scheißkerl da oben. Oh, da oben. Oh, es muss gebeten werden. Oh, warum?
Wo?
Die Kirchen und die Familie.
That audio is actually more terrifying to me than the scenes in the movie. You can YouTube Anneliese Michel Exorcism and see the footage as well. Anneliese's grandmother passed away in May of 1975, which made Anneliese even worse off than before. And after her grandmother died, that's when the first allegations came up that she was possessed by Cain, Nero, Hitler, Fleischmann, Judas, and Lucifer. According to medical doctors, they feel strongly that her mother and father Alt might have had something to do with Anneliese's dissociative disorder.
On the 3rd of August 1975, tossing her medical records to the side, she went through her first exorcism. Based only on Father Alt's reports of events, he said Bishop Joseph Stangl was the one who gave a written authorised statement that it was fine for her to go through the exorcism. After this, Father Renz told her mother and father that he did not see anything that indicated demonic possession.
From September until she passed away, Anneliese underwent 67 exorcisms. The 1614 exorcism rite is made up of 11 prayers and 17 biblical scriptures. It's supposed to last only 20 to 25 minutes. It's then repeated over and over again. One session of exorcism could last anywhere between 2 and 12 hours. These sessions are supposed to happen over a few weeks, maybe a month. Long exorcisms are performed first, and then the last of them should just be little sessions to see if the person who was possessed possibly still has demons inside them. During these 10 months of exorcisms, Anneliese lost her appetite, but this could also be because in Roman rituals, the priest and the person being exorcised are supposed to fast. So her health and her weight were declining, and not once did her family or the priest take her to get help from a doctor.
On the 1st of July, 1976, Anneliese passed away in her sleep because of how emaciated she had become and how dehydrated she was. Well, Father Alt went as fast as he could to get a certificate that said she died of natural causes. He couldn't get it because the physician said she was emaciated and she had so many wounds, contusions, and bruises all over her. Her teeth were chipped, all around her eyes were black, and she had bruises everywhere. They tried to pass this off as punishment from demons for her not being pure, but of course there was no proof of that.
Anneliese's parents and Father Alt, along with Father Renz, were charged with negligent homicide. The court ordered that Anneliese's corpse be exhumed so it could be examined again. The priests had 11 months' worth of recordings that they let the court hear. The prosecution asked that if they were declared guilty, none of them should be put in jail. Instead, the prosecution suggested that the priest should be fined and that the parents had suffered enough, and that could be done by law in Germany. The trial started in March of 1978.
A doctor on the stand said he was sure Anneliese was never possessed, and she was suffering from psychological problems due to her severe religious background and how her parents raised her, as well as having epilepsy. Dr. Richard Roth attended a few of the exorcisms, and reportedly he said to Anneliese that there is no injection against the devil. The defence argued that according to the German constitution, it protected people in the unlimited exercise of their religious beliefs. Since the priests were doing what they were asked to do by the parents and everyone was professional, all of them were protected from being reprimanded for everything, and exorcism was not illegal. Since they were so sure Anneliese was possessed, the tapes were turned over to the court and played for all of them to hear.
There was a letter to the court written by Bishop Joseph Stangl. He said he did give the okay for the exorcism to happen, but he was not privy to her mental or physical health conditions beforehand. The bishop was not made to testify in the courtroom.
There was proof at trial that alleges Father Alt just wanted to do an exorcism so he could lecture and write books about it. Even though he did have all of the exorcisms recorded, he failed to record what was going on before the actual exorcism took place.
The priest and the parents were declared guilty of manslaughter. They were all to spend 6 months behind bars with 3 years of probation following that. The priest and the church were fined a little more than the court fees. Eventually, their sentence was brought down to only 3 months, but they didn't even have to serve that much time before they were all released.
Today, Anneliese's grave in Klingenberg, Maine, has been and still is a place that Catholics go and visit. Some Catholics consider Anneliese Michel a sincere believer who suffered immensely to assist departed souls in purgatory, which could be why in the Exorcism of Emily Rose, the priest said at the end, one day, she would be considered a saint. So that was our comparison of the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose and the real story of Anneliese Michel. I think the movie did a good job portraying the story loosely based on Anneliese Michel. I also think that a lot of things were embellished, but it still didn't scare me as much as the real story. So even though this is loosely based on the story of Anneliese Michel, personally, I think that the real story is scarier than any movie they could try to make out of it. What do you think?